Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls out there in Gladiators of Sport land for another edition of this show that we're doing here on YouTube for you, the Alan Mance Moulders Yellow Door, Gladiators of Sport. And we've got a great panel lined up here for you. But before I get to the panel, let me tell you who we're brought to you by here at Yellow Door. We're in the beautiful confines of the outdoor area of Yellow Door at the very back part of the premises, as you can see with the yellow umbrellas surrounding me and the yellow paintwork here. Yes, Yellow Door in the heart of the Albert Park Village. Breakfast, brunch and lunch 7 days a week. The lunch special, any main plus a wine or beer for $22, and of course, big autumn specials. Soup and sourdough, house-made ravioli, beautiful there for you. The best parma in Albert Park, spicy fish sliders. New Philly steak wrap, new mini burger sliders with hand-cut chips. It's all there for you here at Yellow Door in the middle of the Albert Park Shopping Centre. And, of course, our other great sponsor and promoter is the Alan Mance Moulders Group out there in Footscray, Melton and Bacchus Marsh. And what a great job they do out there. Mr. Philip Mance, not here today, currently doing some big business deals overseas in Spain, Italy, the USA. He's all around the world as our number one director of the Alan Mance Moulders Group, Mr. Philip Mance. But it's all happening down at Alan Mance this week. The great new Navara Titanium Limited Edition is there for you now. Australia's most powerful tradie, a beautiful, hard-working motor vehicle that gets the work done at every point in time, ladies and gentlemen. It's based on the popular S7 ST dual cab 4x4. This model is packed with a mind-boggling array of extras, including leather accented seats, sunroof, Bose audio speakers, satellite navigation and reversing camera. Yes, magnificent motor vehicle. Extras on top of extras on top of extras for you at Alan Mance Moulders. It's Australia's only 3-litre engine. Wait until I introduce you, Troy, before you start. Yes, it's all happening at Alan Mance Moulders this week. Don't stress relate, don't pontificate, don't hesitate. Just get down to Alan Mance and join the race for space and get the interest-free deal on your new motor vehicle that won't make your accountant hyperventilate. Don't lose your shirt, don't lose your pants, and don't take a chance. Go to Alan Mance. Footscray, Melton and Bacchus Marsh. Mance Mania has got a hold on me. Yeah, baby! And, of course, let's not forget Riccardo's Trattoria down the road there for fine, magnificently home-cooked Italian cuisine from the recipes of aficionados of the fine art of traditional Italian cooking. And you're looking at one right here now. Open all weekend, lunch and dinner. Lunches on Sunday, $29. $29. Think about that when you're driving over from north, south, east and west. $29 lunch at Riccardo's this Sunday as we go. And now let me introduce the panel for this week's show, ladies and gentlemen. Sitting to my right is the former sports editor and football editor of the Herald Sun. Over many years, he wrote the history of the North Melbourne Football Club, the history of Tasmanian football. He's written many books on both of those particular pursuits. He is none other than Mr. Geoffrey Poulter. How are you, Geoffrey?
Thank you, Stephen. A pleasure to be here.
Excellent, Geoffrey, and I love your input every week now. And also from 1116 SEN, he's a master of nostalgia sports shows. You talk about it, initially speaking, the good, the bad and the ugly, all those shows on 1116 SEN, Mr. Troy Zantuck.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and great to be here. A new setting, and I'm very excited, and welcome to you, Pulse. A pleasure. Tremendous performance. The feedback that I've received about your performance last week was absolutely outstanding. So great to have you on board.
That's really good news.
Yep,
Troy. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Geoffrey. Troy's got the roving mic there with the viewing audience here today who are here, and there may be some questions from them later on during
the show.
You've got
Marcel Marceau, Humphrey B. Bear and Fat Cat lined up for all of you guys.
Yeah. Our listening audience, of course, our viewing audience will be possibly asking some questions.
At Marcel Marceau's funeral, Stephen, they had a minute's noise.
Here's some gold from Geoffrey Poulter.
He started it already. There's no doubt about that. Now, gentlemen, again this week we've had a double problem or a triple problem at the Collingwood Football Club this week. And then, of course, I have the footy records from last week. I went to 2 live matches last week. Richmond Hawthorn on the Friday night, St Kilda North on the Sunday. Both of them crackerjack games of football. And, of course, we celebrated in the St Kilda North game the 300 games of Drew Petri, the great North Melbourne captain, who's... No, he's not captain now, is he? He used to be. Or was he? He
was the vice captain. Acting captain. He was
captaining the Shinboners at the moment, Stephen.
He was acting captain.
Drew was vice captain, sorry. And what a great performer he has been over the years at full forward and centre half forward for that team, and still is with the 300 games.
And relation of rugged Ronnie Andrews, Pulse.
That's true. Yeah, Ronnie. Yeah.
Nephew of the great rugged Ronald.
He's been
Andrews for Essendon.
Better known as Rotten Ronnie Andrews. What a great backman he was for the Dons during
Ronnie
the 70s and 80s.
Essendon played St Kilda in his first game of league football, Ron Andrews. He said that he took a mark and then I think kicked a point or a goal. I think he kicked a goal. And he was standing at centre-half forward and waiting for the ball to come back. And while he was standing there, he copped a whack across the back of the head. The St Kilda player who delivered that whack said to him, he said, welcome to footy, son.
And let's guess,
Sunshine.
ladies and gentlemen, who that St Kilda player was.
It was
other than
a certain ruckman called Carl Dietrich.
Surprise!
Now,
Back
boys,
to you, Pulse.
Well, Ron Andrews, as you mentioned, Stephen, started as a forward. And
he did.
There's not too many great backmen or long-term backmen that started as backmen. You know, the Langford, Roos, Mew, all these fellas started as forwards. It's amazing, isn't it?
Well, it is, but one thing about Ron Andrews, when he did leave Essendon and went to Collingwood, in the 1984 preliminary final, he kicked, I think he either kicked all of Collingwood's goals. They got flogged by 150 points or something.
130
I think
something.
he kicked nearly all their goals. He kicked 5 or 6 goals out of 8 or whatever. So Essendon or former Essendon players kicked about 99% of the score. I've actually brought with me the AFL record guide here today, ladies and gentlemen, if I need to refer to it.
Unfortunately, with the injured Brownlow medalist Nat Fyfe on the front cover and some unfortunate
And the back cover too.
For the Dockers fans, Pulse, is it Fyfe
out for the year?
Out for the year.
Yeah,
So
well,
with Jared Ruffhead on the back of that publication, it's probably not a good idea to be. You wouldn't be lining up the photograph for next year's, would you?
It's the footballer's curse, Pulse.
Well, it's not too good, is it? But I can tell you this, that in fact it was to half-time. Andrews kicked in that game, that preliminary final, 3 goals up to half-time. So all Essendon or former Essendon players had kicked all the score up till then. In that preliminary final of 1984, of which I was at, Essendon kicked 28-6, 174 to defeat Collingwood 5-11-41. It was an absolute outright massacre, that game. Collingwood fans probably don't want to hear that.
Time only beat the Pies.
And in the grand final, they had kicked 5-15 to three-quarter time.
They did, against Hawthorn, 5-15.
Kicked about 8 or 9 in the last quarter.
And just getting back, Pulse, to the question Peaky posed originally. Great career, Drew Petri, and he joins the 300 club at North Melbourne.
Yeah.
Some of the other superstars that are part of that club.
The total of 5 now. The thing about Drew Petri is he's lost weight over the last few years. As he's got older, he's got fitter. Does that make sense? And he did have that problem about 2010 where he missed most of the year. You know, with a year and a half almost with foot injuries. He overcame those. He's just been a big-hearted forward. North of, obviously, looking for a key forward since the great man left at the end of 01. And they've had some. You know, Thompson was a good player, wasn't he, for a while? And Waite's become a good player. But through all that period, Petri has been the constant.
He has been. And what a great forward line that now is for North. I tipped them to win the flag, actually, before the season started. Because they're very well organised, they're well drilled, they've got strong forwards who can stand up and take pack marks. Every one of those guys.
Also, Stephen, they've had an extraordinary run up until now with injury.
Yeah.
Sean Higgins out for 3 months, which will be a big blow because
that'll hurt him.
Yeah, he's a great link man, isn't he, Sean Higgins?
But not just that, he can also go down there and kick goals. He can do everything,
he's a
Sean.
goal kicker as well.
And not only that, he is a fine gentleman. I don't know whether you boys have met him. I've met him on several occasions. He speaks well. He's very respectful of people who, you know, he meets in the street and has a talk about footy or whatever they want to talk about. And he's also an ambitious fellow. He's doing other things outside the game for his futuristic pursuits lined up. So a hell of a nice bloke, and good luck to him.
And just the exalted company, Pulse, just a question for the viewers. Drew Petri, obviously, he's broken the 300-game barrier. Who does he join at North Melbourne?
Well, he joins Glenn Archer in no particular order. I think it goes Wayne Schimmelbusch, Adam Simpson, Glenn Archer and Brent Harvey going upwards. Just one thing about the injuries you mentioned. Now, that's true, North haven't had too many injuries. But over the last couple of weeks, I mean Thomas had a week's suspension, but Garner, Anderson, Wright, Hansen, there's quite a lot of fellas out tomorrow. Wells, of course. So there's a bit of depth at North. There needs to be because But the key to injuries is, I'm not saying anything, not breaking any ground here. It's who's injured. You can't afford to have injuries to your top 6 or 7. If you've got really good depth, you can cope with your bottom 13 or 14.
Who's been the surprise packet this year for you as basically a North Melbourne historian? You know them back to front.
Yeah.
Who's been the guy who's really stepped up this year?
Well, Tarrant, I thought, although I thought he played well last year. And last year was a breakthrough year for Tarrant because he had a lot of injuries, and North showed a lot of faith in him. They could well have let him go, but he'd been injured for a long time. But he is a naturally good player, isn't he? Like his brother. His brother was a very good player. His brother didn't really reach the heights that he should have reached, I don't think.
He was classy. Chris is the more classier player, but Robbie seems to be the more dour.
Well, you saw the
dour.
but he's got class as well. He took a huge mark the week before. You saw
He did take a great grab.
So I would say Gibson has been good. Troy. And I'm trying. Obviously, Waite's been the player until last week. Waite was been their best player for the whole season.
He's been absolutely unbelievable.
I'm trying to find
well, he has been. He's gone into a system though that does, obviously providing a lot of support.
And Cunnington was probably best for North last week.
But
he's usually
for North.
I'm not surprised.
He's my favourite North Melbourne player.
Yeah, so
when the going gets tough, Ben Cunnington,
he's
there.
as hard as teak.
Yeah. Were you thinking of someone else? Actually, I thought Ferrito's played
No,
quite well this year.
Ferrito was my
Tarrant,
pick for a guy who's really stepped up this year.
I mean, I thought Ferrito was nearly spent at the end of last year.
Well, he looked like he was on the way out, and he's reinvigorated himself. But he knows North have got a massive opportunity here. The Premiership race at the moment, 5 or 6 clubs could win it. It's as wide open as you could get.
Well, I thought 3 are probably a bit. I mean, I'm a North man, but I would say that Sydney, Geelong and Hawthorn are probably a fraction ahead, but I think on the same level as West Coast, Adelaide, GWS and Bulldogs, and I think we could beat them all in Melbourne. But the reason you've got to put West Coast and Adelaide on that same level is because it's very difficult to win on their ground, isn't it?
Yeah, they make it very hard. Home ground advantage does work out in the game, especially when you've got to go into state. And we've heard what some of the experts like Jonathan Brown and others today talking about Jesse Hogan, possibly if he did decide to move. He's already got a bad back, Hogan, apparently. I didn't know that, but he's got some back issues. They reckon those plane flights every week, 8 hours worth of flying per week or every second week, has a debilitating effect on your ability to play longevity-wise in the game. So that might have an effect on whether or not... This is why Fremantle are struggling to get a big name forward to go to Fremantle.
The other thing with the reported offer of 1.5 for 10, that sounds a lot now. But we work out what Alistair Lynch's contract was worth in his 10th year compared. You remember when he went for 10 years?
$2 million for 10 years.
And the other one's Franklin, isn't it? But he's only in year 3, isn't he?
Yeah, I know.
10 years.
Is it 3 or 4?
He played in the losing 12 grand final, but he played in the winning 13, didn't he? He played in the winning 13, so he's been up there.
Hawthorn.
He played in the winning 13, didn't he? Because that was the farewell. 14, 15, 16.
Yeah,
so what will whatever? He's a 1 million for 10, isn't he? Or 1 point.
It's 1 point something. I think it was.
But it'd be interesting to know. But I would think that just the normal rate of inflation, that you get a 10-year contract and you think you've done it well, but in your 10th... No, I bet you're not going too well in your 9th and 10th years.
Yeah, but you've got to remember when Alistair Lynch, he says this today, when he did his deal, $1 million a year or whatever it was massive. And he was happy to take that deal, even though when he was getting towards the end of his career, it was blown money.
And also, you may not reach the end.
$200,000 a year, $2 million over 10 years, $200,000 a year. I need my calculator with me.
And you'd get paid whether you only get to the end of year 6 or 7, don't you?
Well, that's not completely correct when they start getting around the negotiation table and say, look, this is where this is at.
Well, I don't know.
Injuries and all the rest of it, because you've put these clauses in there because you don't like to pay for fresh air or wastage, and what you do is you try and reach a figure that is acceptable as a payout figure. So that might have been, say, $100,000 or whatever it might have been.
I'm tipping you'd be a weapon of mass destruction around a negotiating table.
Well, I've been known to be hard. at times where you have to be, right? But what you try and do is massage or mediate a deal that makes everyone can live with, but you're not paying out massive dollars or the top dollars. But then someone else is prepared to accept a bit less to take, well, I've got that now without a fight, because you can turn around and say, look, if you want to get the lot, we'll take you, we'll go to court with you, sort of thing. You know?
There's a guy
and it's not always paid on an equal share basis, is it? Like if you're on 1.5 for 10 years, they don't necessarily give you that. You might get more or less in some years, mightn't you?
Well,
that's the average.
Well, they usually
if
back
it's
in
base.
those contracts, Paul.
You've got to remember that it all depends on how much of it's base. When you're doing the long-term deals, normally there's a big base attached to that to get someone to take the deal, because the deal is more palatable and satisfactory to a sportsman or woman if it's got big base in it and less match payments. If you can't play, if you only play a handful of games because you're injured, right? Yeah. You get injury money and all the rest of it. It's nothing like having that big base payment that's locked in and there for you, paid in blocks during the year that you know you're going to get whether or not you're on the ground or not on the ground.
Saw a guy on the weekend, boys in a Sydney jumper wearing number 5 with a shock of blonde hair, who could be worth anything in the coming years, called Isaac Heaney.
Coming out of their development academy,
absolutely, he's going to be
he looks a good player,
wonderful. Wonderful player.
He's got a number of strings to his bow, that kid, no doubt about that. And he's making a mark. I mean, they've managed to keep the thing ticking over. Young Papley, who a lot of other clubs ignored in the draft because of his lack of height, he also looks like he's going to be resilient there and be a long-term player for Sydney, gentlemen. When I did start the show, before we'll develop these footy topics, just getting back on some of our more administrative issues there. I mean, during the week, boys, we saw Eddie McGuire a week ago say he could nearly walk away from the game after Carlton got beated by Collingwood. Now, Geoffrey, you've been editor of
Collingwood actually beat.
I'm not sure.
Carlton
beat
Collingwood. They were beaten, and it wasn't a great margin on the scoreboard, but psychologically, it was huge.
That cut to the quick, because we know Carlton's in a massive rebuild program, and Collingwood saw themselves as being potentially finalists this year, which I never actually saw that. I never had them in there.
We did say last week that Carlton had their best side available for the first time, didn't they?
Yeah, but their best side is just...
I know, it's all relative, I know that.
Half of it's still nursery level.
Collingwood would have had 10 out of their best side, wouldn't they?
Well, 10? Oh, not 10, I don't
That said, you have to
some of them...
You have to dip your lid to what Brendan Bolton's brought to the club so far. If you're a Carlton supporter, there seems to be a structure there. There seems to be a way of playing a positive form of football. Yeah. And he seems to have all the Carlton guys on the same page, which they haven't been for a long time.
No, he's done a good job.
Well, he has. I mean, don't forget, he's got a lot of young players to work with who haven't been, wouldn't spend much time under other coaches or Michael Malthouse, so to speak. But look, even Michael Malthouse, he made some very interesting comments during the week.
How did you see those comments he made regarding Buckley?
Well, look, the main thing is that we can see how they're on two completely different pathways. Nathan Buckley got rid of, I don't know how many, 12 or 14 players, all up since, or maybe more than that since he's been there, but he got rid of some names that everybody got a bit of a shock they were going. Malthouse was saying that team was capable of winning more flags as it was with just your normal recruiting patterns taking place in the next 4 or 5 years. Malthouse and Buckley obviously saw the whole situation as being completely different. Now, Malthouse, you've got to give him a bit of credit. He won a flag with basically what he had there, that team, and then runners up the next year. And he's saying that team could have gone further as it was without dismantling it. That's what he's saying. And he said, you live and die by your actions. And he was sort of saying, I read between the lines, he was saying Buckley's made a hash of it. That's what I read into it, Troy.
Yeah, well, that's what he was saying, wasn't it? I mean,
just on that pulse, do you think he had a fair run at it, Malthouse, didn't he?
But the last 2 years, he was given 2 years.
At Collingwood.
Someone said to me yesterday, why didn't he agree to it? But
he said he was under pressure.
His last 2 years were 1 and 2.
1 and 2 is his last 2
and
years,
and he
unloaded.
And they probably would have won the grand final if they'd chosen the right player for Hawkins in the last quarter, wouldn't they?
Look, I think in answer to your question, it's called a 3-letter word called ego, and I think that got in the way.
That got in the way
Malthouse, with the handing over of the reins to Nathan Buckley.
Yeah, but you think about it, Troy. I mean, when he signed it. He seemed to sign it under duress. He wasn't happy at that press conference when it was announced, and he wasn't happy at the handover.
Well, why sign it?
Well, because he says at the time he was under duress.
So they
placed under duress.
They put him under that pressure because they didn't want Buckley to go somewhere, right?
To North.
Yeah.
I think personally, I would have thought it would have been great for Nathan Buckley to go elsewhere and the pressure would have been right off him. But it's red hot now, isn't it?
Well,
with
it's
the
hot
situation
now.
Collingwood's in.
It's hot now, but just getting back to that point, when you look at it, what they did, maybe McGuire didn't think they were going to win a flag. That contract was signed in 2008 or 9 for that handover at the end of 2011. So he may not have thought that the team, he might have thought they were not going to do the job in 2010 or 2011. But to stick to that, 2010, first and then second, and then the guy's got to turn, Moldhouse got to turn and say, here's the baton and pass it on to another, to an untried coach. That to me it's disastrous, really, and it's Buckley. I think Buckley probably wasn't going to knock it back, but he possibly should have said, look, why don't we keep Mick and me together for another 1 or 2 years and just wait until natural attrition sees what takes place, rather than a forced move. Because that is, at the moment, that's turned out to be a mistake by McGuire's only mistake or big mistake in his tenure.
Now, like most of these things, I think the answer lies in between. And I think that, Collingwood may well have been competitive under Malthouse for 3 or 4 more years. May not have won a premiership. May have finished, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. So someone decided that wasn't good enough. Someone must have said, no, hang on, no, we don't do that. We're going to get rid of 10 players. Mm-hmm. We're going to go down the bottom, or 3/4 of the way down, rebuild with a lot of young players and come again. So you know how you make this judgment about whether you're going to go down and rebuild. It's usually not with that sort of equipment. You don't usually, if you've got Beams and Wellingham and O'Brien and Thomas and Heathshaw, you don't really say, and they're still all playing, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're
Beams.
Still all playing.
Beams
but to me, it was a
Why would you
fractured list, Colts. Those guys that you mentioned, I think a lot of them needed a new environment. And Heathshaw, you mentioned there.
Yeah, won a best and fairest All-Australian last year.
He's just been absolutely extraordinary in all Australia.
Yeah, but he was still playing very good football.
I understand that.
Did he need a new environment if Malthouse had still been coach?
If Malthouse would never have got rid of Shaw.
Well, that's a really good
that's
point.
The whole
or
point.
Thomas,
that's a very
would
good
have stayed
point.
there.
He's like his son too.
Yeah, or Beams. He would have been jumping up and down about Beams, whatever.
And Beams is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, I know he wanted to go.
He had family reasons to go to Brisbane.
He did. But at the end of the day, if we will never know for sure. But there were players who were traded out. Lumumba was another one who seemed to clash with Buckley, and a little bit of friction taking place. Now, once you start getting rid of blokes who have got talent, got ability, and I've spoken to a one-eyed Collingwood lawyer about this, he's distraught that these players will let go.
But just
distraught.
You brought up a good point before, Peaky, about untried coaches. Well, the success story, the poster boy for that has been Luke Beveridge. Yeah. The Western Bulldogs took a huge gamble, a huge risk, and look at the results he's been reaping over the last 18 months.
Untried at league level.
At league level.
I know he coached and beats Mentone.
He had a great junior record.
And he was at Collingwood when they won their premiership, and he was under Alistair Clarkson. I know all this, Pulse. But to actually have your own team at league level is
everybody's untried.
No one's arguing with the toss with you on that one.
No, because I'll just mention all the facts to you, Steve.
I do appreciate you mentioning those facts without a shadow of a doubt. But I can say this: we inside the football system, Geoffrey and Troy, the football system knew how good he was because he was poached from Port Adelaide to St Kilda as the director of football, and when Richardson was appointed coach, because Richardson knew how good he was and didn't get to take one breath in that tenure because he was then poached again. He was super poached by the Western Bulldogs.
Super poached. That's how you like your eggs at Yellow Door, isn't it? Super poached.
He's correct. Super poached to the Western Bulldogs.
You think he scrambled that one, do you?
His record's been superb. Just back on the coaches, the first 100 games. Did you see the statistics that were given AFL media this week? Nathan Buckley's statistics aren't all that bad. 53% in his first 100 games, right? Alistair Clarkson was only 51%, right? But he came in when they were at their lowest ebb rebuilding.
There are coaches that are not included in that.
Yeah, there are. And Alan Jeans.
Chris Scott's not included.
Chris Scott's not there at the moment.
He's won 86 out of 120.
I think those stats are a little misleading, Peaky.
You're talking about these ones who are printed on AFL media?
I think they are.
Yeah, from what point of view?
Well, Pulse just mentioned, if you've got a great list and you're handed the reins, well, absolutely, your coaching record, your coaching stats, the percentage of wins is going to be higher.
You can still make a hash of it. Don't forget, this is the first 100 games of each coach's career. So the Moldhouse stats are about when he started at Footscray in 1986, right? 86 to 88, in his first year at West Coast or whatever.
But it's what you start with, surely, is important.
Oh, that helps, yeah. Sheedy came in, when Bill Stephen had put together the Baby Bombers.
Well, actually, Bill Stephen put them together, and there was a coach in between Bill Stephen and Barry Davis, the great Barry Davis.
And he helped bring those kids on
He
board. When Sheedy
did.
got there, they were already, some of them were already 3 or 4 year players from those babies from 87, 88. Now he
had a shocking start to his...
Kevin Sheedy.
Absolutely.
I think
he lost a lot of games.
He lost, well, hang
at
on
the start of his career.
He lost that first season. He lost first four, and then they won the next 16 and made the finals.
I understand
that.
that.
He won, Troy.
But he was considering putting the boots back on at one stage.
Was that with Essendon?
Absolutely.
Well, he won. He's on top of this list, 73%.
Might have been said tongue in cheek, but he wasn't happy with his start to his coaching career.
That would have been at the very start when they lost their first 4, because he's on top of this with 73% of his first 100 games.
I'd like you to do some homework for me, Stephen, and just get the stats on Kev Sheedy's
comments.
First 8 games at Essendon.
What his comments were.
They're only the well-known coaches.
This is the well-known. Well, Alan Jeans, they've left Alan Jeans out. Alan Jeans, I did some research.
What's his first time?
He came in his first year 4th, then 6th, then 4th, then 6th, then 2nd. I worked it out that he's up around about 60-odd percent.
They've only chosen some.
I wrote it down on some notes. Yeah, they haven't put them all together.
There's a lot more that have got a bit
well, Ross Lyon's actually 64%.
First 100 games.
He went 9th, 9th, and then 2007, then 4th, 9th, 4th, 2nd, and 2nd.
You can have a 55% record and not make the finals in any of those first 4 years.
Correct. Well, as we saw with the coaching.
You've got to win 12 and a good percentage to make the finals. So 11 out of 22, you know. Yeah. So
we know the overall list there. We know what it's like. You know, that's just in finals, but it is a. Statistics don't lie, and they can be damning, but you don't have to. They can be used in different formats. So, should Eddie McGuire give it away? Has Eddie McGuire come to the end of his tether at Collingwood when he come out and made those comments? And he looked like he was close to tears after the Collingwood game. He's there with his family, his 2 sons. They were very upset, anxious, and upset with the result. He's been there. Is it now? 16, 18 years. I don't believe he should walk, if you want my view of it, because when he got there, they were $7 million in debt, and the club was going nowhere. They were on the bottom of the ladder, treading water. They were playing football through treacle, as we say, and going nowhere. And he's come in and turned that around, and they're now a $65 million a year operation. How can you walk away? There's no one amongst the supporters surely saying he should walk.
Your sources are very good. You love the football grapevine, Stephen. Are there any forces circling?
Well, I don't engage in innuendo or gossip, Troy. I deal in facts and substance, which is
yes or a no suffices.
We don't
need to name the sources, but are there sources who would be interested in a Collingwood presidency?
I don't think there's anyone out there that's put their hand up to challenge at this point.
That's all I wanted to
do. Because the way things are run there, they're run fairly stringently, and how could you put your hand up at this point in time against Eddie when he has won a flag in his tenure? He has turned it into a $65 million a year operation.
He basically rescued the club.
He's rescued the club, took them down to the Yarra River,
Yep.
Lexus Centre, whatever they call it now. What is it called now? Icon Park or something? Or what is it?
The Westpac Centre.
Westpac Centre.
Yep.
I don't know why clubs. I know sponsorship's important, but why keep changing your derivative name? I mean, it makes it very, very difficult for people who can't keep up with that. And I'm one of those people, right?
So you don't think there's a curability agreement, Stephen?
Yes.
You think maybe natural progression, that you're waiting for Craig Kelly to become available, do you think?
Craig would be... he's had enormous experience, but it'd have to be the way things are there, I think it'd have to be a gentle handover. It'd have to be the board welcomes someone on, and because I think they're past the time now there where they're going to get into a stoush. I think they probably want to do it the soft way.
Yeah, that's best case scenario, Stephen.
It probably is best case scenario. No doubt about that.
No, I think Eddie McGuire, his tenure so far, he's been outstanding for the Collingwood Football Club. They come first, second and third as far as he's concerned, and good on him, I say.
Yeah, well, he's been, they wouldn't be where they are now without him. So,
but if he gave it away tomorrow, look, he's got a lot of other things going on in his life.
Well, he'd fill up the time. He'd be able to fill the time up, but he'd still be working behind the scenes. But I see him as a Jock McHale type who really he should. You don't get stale in that job when you keep coming up with ideas and bringing in new sponsors and new business and regenerating the place, with the people you've got. So I think he'll be all right. Ross Lyon doesn't believe in the word rebuild, gentlemen. He refuses to mention that word in press conferences. He calls it a re-stump, a rewire, or a re-plumb, but not a rebuild.
Well, they've got a few problems, haven't they? And the two planes. I always reckon the two-plane trip is the loser.
Yeah.
The two-plane trip to Launceston, I reckon you've really got to be good to overcome that. So you wouldn't give them much chance against Hawthorn over there, would you? The rejuvenation is yet to come. They'll have to be put off for another week. They've got a home game the week after against maybe Richmond, is it? I know they've got a home game the week after. So 0 and 8, you'd probably think, wouldn't you?
But how could we have seen this coming?
No, well, you couldn't. And I was looked at my final 8.
People have.
Someone said to me, "Did you have Collingwood in the 8?" And I said, "No, but I did have Fremantle and I did have Port Adelaide." I mean.
Well, I think if you surveyed, the football public pulse, 99% of people, bar Brad Johnson, would have had Fremantle in their top 8.
And Port Adelaide, did you have them?
Port Adelaide, no.
They're a yo-yo team, Port Adelaide. They're flaky.
The Ryder and Monfries was the key there, wasn't it? Whether
two
you put them
keys,
in or not,
yeah.
yes.
Two big keys, but it seems to be there's something wrong with that mob that they can come out one week and be insipid and the next week come out and play blitzkrieg football. That to me is, and it's not as if they're a baby side. They've now had a bit of experience. They've been to the finals a couple of years ago, so their finals experienced men who aren't playing to their optimal consistently week in, week out. I think
opposition analysis has been quite outstanding on Port Adelaide in their game plan and the way they play.
Who analysed them? Sorry, Troy.
No, the opposition analysis of Port Adelaide
could well be because they get caught on the way back, coming back the other way. They get opened up in the back line. They leak in the back, something chronic. Now, just getting back to the Lyon thing there about what we were talking about there, and comment was made last night at 11:16 again, where I didn't actually get an opportunity to respond to in last night's show, but. I'll tell you, the philosophy of Ross Lyon right now is this. This is my opinion of it. I don't know facts. This is an opinion based on what he's doing. He's scrubbed this year. He's wiped this year as far as there's no way they can make finals. He can't get his toe. Fife and Sandilands out for the year. You go to hospital, have your operations, go and lie on the beach, and then get yourselves right, and then get back in the gym in October. Right?
Okay. In saying that, how does he play it out?
He plays it out by bringing along everybody on his list. Young Darcy Gray, I think his name is Darcy Gray, young Hughes. There's a number of boys there. There's 9 players who played less than 10 games, and he's got 14 less than 50. He will play and have to play them and put as many games as he can into his list so that by the end of the year he knows who's going to make it and who's not going to make it. Now, and just sacrifice games. I mean, you can call it what you want, but he's allowed to do it. Under the rules, he can play. He's got a list of 42. He can play who he wants. And he can tell guys to go to the doctors, go to the hospital, get your operations done. He dropped Dawson for the first time this week, which was surprising. But Dawson apparently was used in the ruck last week a fair bit, which was never going to work. And he sent Zach back to the waffle to try and generate some form. So there's guys on his rookie list. Morabito's still on the rookie list. He can't get him anywhere near the track. I don't know where he's placed at the moment. But he will put games into 10, 15 kids on that list and just put game after game after game into them.
Will we see them back finals bound next year, Peaky?
That's what
Can they rebound that quickly?
Yeah, well, Damien Barrett believes that he's aiming for the 2017 flag. That's what he says in terms of finals, flag and all the rest of it, which is... That's the aim. The aim is to have a fit Sandilands. So if you put them out for a year, their bodies don't get hammered for the next...
That's presupposing nobody else competes.
Well, but hang on a minute, Geoffrey. That's the aim. You've got to have an aim. So his aim is...
This idea of rebuilding, it always intrigues me,
Yeah, but he's got no choice now.
There's 18 clubs and there's no guarantees. What's happened to Richmond in these clubs? They rebuild to a certain level
and level out.
That's it.
They've levelled out. Yeah, so Ross Lyon, he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to get to sixth and say that's it. Because
when he does,
but he will put some strong bodies in.
But when he does come back, there's no guarantees about the young players that they're nursing and grooming. I mean, they might only be good enough to finish sixth, and then you can get back and start
with
again.
Richmond, I think you're right, and I think they actually tailor-made themselves to that position to not upset their supporters by bottoming out.
Well, they won't know themselves, Fremantle, because they'll have an early draft pick.
Well, they won't know themselves. They've had no early draft picks the whole time he's been there. But just remember this: Cam McCarthy is floating around in Fremantle and doesn't want to go back to GWS, and Jesse Hogan has yet to sign with Melbourne. So Fremantle people officials will be all over those two like a seagull over a piece of fat.
Yeah, well, I'll get one of those.
Yeah.
Probably.
But it will be an intriguing challenge for one Ross Lyon to see if he can actually reset this team.
Well, all he can do is work with what he's got. So if he plays all those youngsters like he said he's doing, which he'll do, I think at the end of next year he will try and get a couple of strong bodies in from other clubs. He'll cherry pick what he wants. Players that might be let low from other clubs at 26, 27, 28 years of age that have got some, can play 3 or 4 years. Put some strong bodies around these younger kids, a bit like what Geelong have done with Henderson and Dangerfield and Selwood and co. Put a few strong bodies in, get Zanderland's right for another year, get Fife right for next year. Pavlich retires. Dawson, well, you'd hope Zach can go another year. I hope he can. He's 29, 30. And see if he needs a centre back. He needs another backman there to shore up because Michael Johnson may not go on. Michael Johnson's in injury trouble. So
The big one for me was the loss of Luke McFarlane.
Massive
He
loss.
was a general in the back line.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Bennell hasn't played a game yet, has he?
Correct.
And Bennell can't get on the park. If you had Bennell, Ballantyne and Walters all up the forward line around a McCarthy and a Hogan, how would that be? That would be pretty good, but you've still got to have your back line together. You need a fit, strong and healthy Dawson and a centre back. They need to get... They really need a Carlisle type. They need a Carlisle type at centre back.
Well, they went for Hooker, didn't they?
They went for Hooker, had a crack at Hooker.
Hooker realised
and they missed out on him.
It wasn't.
Because he stayed with and Essendon now look like, if you hear latest reports, and it's what I've always been saying all the way through, the whole 12. Hooker was the one I had a problem with. I thought he might have gone to Freo, but the other 11 were always going to stay. It's just a matter of time. Training together, they've all been training together now for 4 or 5 months. They've even made a closer bond. That 12 now are bonded for life. They're bonded for life, and they're not going to split up now.
And what have been some of the other issues that have troubled you this week, Stephen, in sport?
Well, I noticed that Rodney. Well, before I get to that, we'll do the matches just in a moment. But I was glad to see young Jared Talent get his gold medal. He's going to get a gold medal appointed.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Is it going to be on grand final day?
Well, no, it can't be, Troy, because you know why? Because the Rio Olympics are on in August, right? So it's got to be before the Rio Olympics because before he might win another gold.
Yep.
What are you going to do?
No, I'm just
Yeah,
putting
give
the
me-
question
Well,
forward.
I'm happy to, but
I'm putting the question forward.
you're out of business.
Wouldn't it be great? Hypothetically. I'm going down the hypothetical route here, Stephen.
You're out of business with your calendar at the moment because, and I know you're being hypothetical about it, but incorrect hypothetical.
I'm
because,
actually being hysterical about it at the
well,
moment.
I'd like you to be, but just remember this, that now I've got these names wrong last night, but Sergei Kurjapin from Russia, who won the gold medal, has been
Otherwise
suspended.
known as Bruce Smith.
The bloke who beat him. The bloke who beat him is going to finish his suspension just in time to beat him again for the gold medal next time.
Well, look, he got beaten in the world walk by Alex Schwarzer from Italy.
And he comes back about
Sounds
a
like
month.
an Austrian.
He comes back about a month before the Olympics.
Well, no, Schwarzer's just beaten him now.
Yeah.
He's come back from 3.5 years out suspended, and Dave Colbert, he's going berserk about it, the athletics expert, that he was even allowed to compete in this, and he's up against another guy who'd been rubbed out for...
Maybe they should get that guy to walk the plank.
Which... Schwarzer or Kurjapin?
Well,
You want to do a double walk?
we'll go the double. Now, Peaky,
Troy, just on your answer,
Yes.
pick a game at the MCG, a match, a Geelong Hawthorn or a North Melbourne
Where there's
Hawthorn,
going to be a huge
where there's
crowd.
going to be 80,000 people there, and
like
that's
it.
when you get the Olympic officials down there before you get to Rio and award that medal to the boy
like
before
it.
he flies out. And do it on the MCG in the middle with all the Olympic people there, and maybe get him to do a lap of honour with, probably Rob De Castella's getting on a bit, but probably with the Monaghetti and/or...
both marathon runners.
Marathon runners. Yeah, well... I'm not too sure amongst the walkers, but get him to go around here with
Get Kerry Saxby out there.
Well,
She'd be great.
Well, Kerry Saxby, but get some of the current athletes before they go to Rio. In the running group, get them to all run behind him as they jog around there. He's not going to walk around the MCG because he's a walker in the games. If he was a javelin thrower, you wouldn't have him throwing javelins into the crowd, you donkey. So let him jog round. Now, Geoffrey's got some very quirky comments he wants to make today about certain issues.
Just a short, quirky one, Troy and Stephen. I was around this area 27 years ago, at the Middle Parks Danish Club, and I filed this story for the Herald about the legendary Bob Pratt. Now, Bob Pratt was a football legend in a time when the game was larger than life. Yesterday, a collection of sports stars and just plain admirers paid tribute to the great man with a hero's reception as he entered Middle Park Danish Club dining room. For the next hour or so, this warm and sincere character transfixed the audience with a fascinating repertoire of stories and anecdotes of South Melbourne, Bob Pratt and football folklore. It was riveting stuff. Pratt's 77 in September. This is filed on the 3rd of March 1989. Yeah. The only full forward to win the goal kicking in 3 straight years with century tallies. Still is. Ablett has sort of equalled that by tying with Modra in the 3rd year. Mm. And joint record holder of the most goals in a season with 150, 3 fewer than Peter Hudson games, is recognised as the daddy of them all. His peers are almost unanimous on that. He was a sensational performer, in his own words, the greatest draw card of his day. Smiling broadly, he prefaced that remark by saying he didn't want to skite. Crowds used to come from everywhere to see me. They were on the trams at 11 in the morning with their sandwiches and tea to get down to South. And make no mistake, they did. His day was the 30s, a golden era in VFL football. The Depression when players were hungry for a kick. And a quid and a feed. The South Melbourne team got £5 each for winning the 1933 flag. Later, teams had picked up a little when Pratt went to a VFA club, Coburg, without a clearance. Sponsors maintained their spearhead was a picture of sartorial elegance by providing him with a year's supply of shirts, collars and studs, 2 pairs of sports trousers, 2 pairs of steel-shanked boots and 2 years' supply of police and firemen's braces for his suspenders and socks. Yesterday's Master of Ceremonies, Ken Boyd, that fiery South ruckman from the 60s, drooled at the prospect of Pratt wearing the lightweight footwear of today instead of the heavy steel-shank model. Perhaps in those famous photographs with number 10 sailing across the top of the pack, we would have then only seen his feet, only his feet. Boyd imagined. Now, Dick Reynolds once related that players stopped to applaud some of Pratt's marks in his 15-goal spree against Essendon. Pratt was recruited as a skinny 17-year-old kid from Mitcham in the late 1920s. That really was the country in those days, he said. My mates reckon it was where they went for Sunday school picnics. He had a picnic in the square with 678 goals in 157 games from 30 to 39. He could kick 70 yards when he started with South Seconds in 1929. There is the odd good kick in league footy today, but on average they wouldn't kick 40 yards, would they? They wouldn't know what a torpedo was. The bloke standing in front of the bar at training used to have bets on me putting them through the right over near the old gate at the South Ground. As they started to die, the wind would carry them in. Nearly finished, boys. But the legend has newfound enthusiasm for the current state of play with the trend back to the long game. This is 27 years ago. I've been watching Geelong, and you know, if they beat Melbourne this week, they're all going to go back to doing it all again. It's going around all the time. Maybe Pratt will now change his mind about making a comeback. Before the Cats' recent surge, he jerked a few weeks ago. What do they get, $1,000 a kick? I reckon I could still get a game for South.
Well done, Pulse. Absolutely. How about a round of applause, Peaky?
Yeah, magnificent stuff. And you mentioned the great South Melbourne ruckman there, Ken Boyd, of course, who was involved in a very controversial incident with John Nichols, I think, in a Carlton South Melbourne game in that era.
I've just been handed an important message for you, Pulse. Right. From Michael Cook, one of our... he's just a great man. He's one of Albert Park's finest. He said the Swans adopted Albert Park Football Club's colours when they merged. Ah, right. So that's from Michael Cook, who's in attendance with the great Philip Hill, a great friend of Stephen J. Peake, and the show.
Yep, next week, Phil, if he's around,
known as the Corporate Balladeer.
Corporate Balladeer might be putting a song together next week, so we could be doing... writing a song at the moment. Mr. Hill is writing a song, and we could be...
Next week, Phil, you'll be front and centre. Got
a feeling that Imagine There's No Richmond might get another go too, maybe next week, without any trouble whatsoever. There are, but we'll sort that out as we go.
Wasn't that great with Geoffrey Poulter, ladies and gentlemen?
Magnificent work from Geoffrey Poulter.
Episode 1 of volume 735. Thank you,
Bringing back
Pops.
some great reminiscing there by Bob Pratt, the great full forward and
He's a
centre forward.
wonderful man. He was in the Box Hill. He was in a Box Hill nursing home, and he used to ring me at the Herald and make comments about things.
And Bob Pratt actually kicked his 150 in the regular season. Is that right, Pops?
He kicked 150. Yeah.
In the regular season?
No, he
During
kicked,
finals?
including the finals, but
Including
he
finals.
played 3 fewer games than Hudson.
3 fewer
Fewer
than,
games
the
than
great Peter
Hudson
Hudson.
kicked 150 in the
Hudson should have got it. He
Had
should
the
have broken
chance,
it.
and
Yeah.
the man in question who was on the mark
Well,
with
Barry
Peter-
Lawrence
yes.
was the man you're referring to, who
I
I
am.
believe was best on the ground in that grand final. Barry Lawrence, who went to full back when Bob Murray got injured. But Peter Hudson was suffering from probably something that happened.
A form of concussion?
Yeah,
possibly.
Possibly a form of concussion happened in the
13
first quarter.
stitches.
13 stitches and a torn earlobe, I think it was, there that he suffered in the
Covered
first
in,
quarter.
a,
But look,
in a great song by Mike Brady, the Peter Hudson. Come on, Hutto, kick that goal.
yeah, well, I've got Peter Hudson up there equal with Lockett as my two favourite full forwards or best full forwards because Hudson was the best in using his body one-on-one. He was a magician. He was an absolute genius.
St
doing
Kilda have
that.
had some fantastic full forwards down the years. George Young, as a young man growing up, was one of my favourites.
Yeah, he was half forward flanker from West Australia. He also played state cricket for West Australia, and I
he
think
did.
he featured on. Was it an open mic with Mike Sheehan, or was it was it one of your interviews, Jeff, on SE 1116?
it was.
Possibly.
And the great Bill Moore, Pulse.
Yeah,
Bill
Bill
Moore,
Moore,
yeah.
who kicked 739 goals for St Kilda. Not too sure whether Revolt will get to him by the time he finishes, but he'll go very, very close. But let's have a look at the teams, gentlemen, coming
Yes.
up for this week, because we've got, I think we've got about 20, 25 minutes left, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, we've got, what was that again, Dan?
15.
We've got 15 minutes, so therefore my calculations were slightly
And
incorrect,
don't
but-
blame Pulse either.
No, I'm not blaming Geoffrey. Adelaide Crows v Geelong tonight there at over at Adelaide on their big new ground. In comes Wayne Malera. Out goes David McGuire with a hamstring. And in for Geelong are Jed Buse, Corey Gregson. Out goes Lincoln McCarthy with an ankle. And then the Kia Cockatoo has got a knee. Geoffrey.
To use a
Adelaide
corny
v Geelong.
line, Stephen, it's a danger game, isn't it?
It is a danger game, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over there, I think Geelong's a better team than Adelaide, but the handicap is playing on the Adelaide ground.
In front of that rabid crowd.
Yeah, so
Yeah, rabid.
that's probably worth 15 points off the top of my head. But I think Geelong will just win.
Did you say wabbit?
Rabid. I said
Are
rabid.
you Elmer Fudd now, are you?
I said,
Oh, it's Wasco here, wabbits.
who are you picking in that game?
It's a
Troy?
coin
Why?
toss, Stephen. It is a
A
coin,
coin toss?
Yep.
Oh, you can't sit on the fence on
No,
Gladiators
I'm not
of
going
Sport.
to. So I'm just going to throw
How's
a
that
coin
go?
up in the air, and it's just landed on the Cats
On the Cats?
by 2 goals.
Yeah, I'm going to go by Geelong by basically 2 or 3 points. I think they can just get home because they're just a bit more harder and they're a bit more resilient than Adelaide. To me, they're good, but they've got I think they've got a couple of glitches in there as well for them. So we'll see how that pans out.
Great game.
Will be a great game.
Great.
Actually, lack another. Well, they've got Jenkins and Walker up forward. And Tom Lynch, of course,
Josh
has been named
Jenkins
up
last
forward, but
week, Potts.
He's been
He
enormous
was
that
playing
point.
like John Coleman.
Yes.
8 goals
Essendon
against the
wish
Dogs.
they hadn't got rid of him, wouldn't they?
Well, he was a rookie at
Foresight's
the
a
time.
wonderful thing, Potts.
He was a rookie at the time. He did have some
60-60.
good form in the NAB Cup competition, and they just let him go. I mean, it was just a terrible thing to see when you see players. I don't like to see that happen to anybody, where they let a kid go young and he turns out to be top class or close to it. Essendon v North Melbourne there, that game, Etihad Stadium, Saturday. In comes Connor McKenna, Patrick Ambrose, Kyle Langford and Darcy Parish for Essendon. Out goes Dempsey with a hamstring, Sean McKernan quad. Gwilt's been managed and rested, and Simkin with a hamstring. In for North is Thomas, who was foolishly and poorly suspended. Brad McKenzie, Jack Dawes in. Out goes Higgins with a knee, Wells quad, and Ferrito managed. So, boys, I'll say North because they're just too professional and too strong. Geoffrey?
Yes, this is the battle of Ascot Vale or Moonee Ponds, perhaps. This is a traditional rivals. The other game of the round with the traditional rivals, of course, is GWS and Gold Coast. But maybe we could call this the Jack Casson Cup.
Yes, I like it, Potts.
Yes, well.
Yeah, because his son John
got
played
some
with,
currency.
his son John played with both clubs and became known as Jack at North. didn't
Or
he?
the Roy Ramsey
But
Cup.
look, this is
Great man, Roy.
Okay, well,
He's a good
I
man.
didn't remember Ramsey, but Casson, yes, Casson was...
Jack Casson, yeah.
Casson at Essendon was quite ruthless.
Part of that
playing.
1977 Premiership team, Pulse.
He's retired.
Casson was in that side, was he?
Lives on the Gold Coast with many other former...
He does.
And near your friend Arnold Bottas, not far from here.
Yeah, my friend who's actually my brother-in-law as well.
Brother-in-law as well.
He's up there.
It's a dual role.
He's a dual role, yeah.
Gentlemen,
He's more a friend than a brother-in-law, actually.
Okay, well, let's get
It's
down
not
to business.
mutually exclusive.
No, they're not mutually
Let's
exclusive.
get down to business here. What are you talking?
I think it'll be a lot closer than most people think. So I'm looking at the Shinboners by 5 goals.
5 goals?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
I'd
be
say
pleased with that.
North by 3 to 5. I think Essendon will put up a big fight for a long time, though. And you tip North as well there,
Yeah,
Geoffrey.
yes.
Hawthorn v Fremantle down in Tasmania there at the Aurora Stadium there, which is very windy and wet most of the time. In comes Frawley and Mitchell for Hawthorn.
Windy and wet.
Yeah, windy and wet.
I noticed you started to smile when you said that.
The Lonnie boys wouldn't be
It
happy.
comes-
The Lonnie boys wouldn't be happy you describing the place as wet.
Well,
Steve.
it is very blowy down there and a bit wet. In comes Frawley and Mitchell. Out goes Riolo with a family illness, and Kieran Lovell is omitted. And, of course, the milestone game was Caden Brand played his first game last week and played quite a reasonable game when he was on the ground. In comes Clancy Pearce, Zach Clark and Ed Langdon for Fremantle. That's a new boy. Langdon's only played 1 or 2 games. Out goes Barlow omitted. That's a big omission there. Michael Barlow finally
He's been
dropped, and
struggling.
Jack Dawson's omitted, as I said before. Matthew
yeah.
Pavlic's rested. So 3 key men in their finals plank over the last 4 years out the side. Geoffrey.
Yeah, Barlow has been struggling according to the experts.
Yes.
The 2 plane trips, that's the killer for Fremantle.
It is. Yeah, you've got to
and
rest
going to
it,
Launceston,
right.
it's a fortress down there. I think
Yeah.
they've won 16 in a row or something. Is that right? 16
Yeah,
in a
something
row?
like that.
Yeah, so
it's
just
impossible.
Yeah, I would think that, and it'd be interesting to see whether they'll bother tagging Mitchell or not.
Oh,
That's a hardy. It's a
the trouble
hoary
is, coaches
chestnut.
don't like tagging anymore because they want to have. They've got their game plan, setting out the players, their midfielders, wanting to do their thing. That seems to be the problem, Troy.
Yeah, I'm actually tipping a forfeit.
A forfeit.
Yeah,
by who?
I don't think they'll board the plane, Fremantle.
Well, Fremantle. they've
Seriously, 15 goals.
Seriously, 15 goals. 15 goals
Well, it's only 80 points.
only. Yeah,
I'm giving you 80 points in.
Oh, now he's throwing bets around. You know.
What do you think?
Well, I reckon Hawthorn will win, but I think it'll be 80 points because Fremantle last week were quite good for lengthy parts of the game. They're actually showing some resilience. I actually think that'll be a 30-pointer to Hawthorn. Nowhere near your 80
Okay,
points.
so nearest the pin,
Nearest the pin, I'll get you coffee next week, all right? If I
gee
lose.
whiz.
Nearest
The
the
last
pin, or
of the
you
big
buy me one.
spenders has entered the building.
Or you buy me one.
I
GWS
won't
Giants.
be buying you any.
Yeah, what do you think about the economics? GWS Giants for the Gold Coast Suns there, which is on Saturday at 4:35. In comes Tim Moore, famous surname, M-O-H-R. Jacob Hopper, and he's related to the big man from St Kilda from the 30s. Out goes Toby Green with soreness and Phil Davis with a hamstring. And Jacob Hopper, that's his first game. In for the Gold Coast there, Jack Leslie, Callum Archie, Matt Shaw, Brandon Matera, Keegan Brooksby, and Tom Nichols. And out goes Curry with a hip, Shade with omitted, Alex Sexton with an arm. Garlett's omitted, Cameron's got a knee, and Rosa has got a string. So, milestone games, Melcheski, I've finally got that right. 200 game, although I believe in the way I pronounce things, I believe that's Melcheski, but I go by what the player says. Melcheski, 200 games, and Darcy McPherson played first game. Geoffrey.
I noticed the sniffle's been brought into the Gold Coast team, Stephen. That's
The Sniffles.
Archie.
Comes
Yeah. His elder brother who plays at
Very
Port
funny, Pulse.
His elder brother who plays at Port Adelaide. They call him the
Funny. You've
Sneeze.
slipped
Well,
that
the
in.
sneeze,
You've
do
slipped
they?
that in 3 weeks in a row, and it gets funnier every week.
Finally managed to
So I think-
snaffle that one out.
You wouldn't think that the Gold Coast would have any chance of winning this game, would you? The red hot GWS. Gold Coast every now and then produce something, but I would think the comfortable win to GWS.
Well, based on the Gold Coast stability with their ins and outs. Yeah, look, GWS are absolutely on fire at the moment, Pulse. So 6 to 8 goals.
It's a big problem at the Gold Coast. They sort of went okay. Was it last year they were paddling along reasonably well, but this year they've just fallen apart with injury. The injuries have played a big part, and now we've got another array of injuries. 1, 2, 3, 4 big-time injuries to that list that they didn't need. So Rodney Eade's got his work cut out. Some scribe or some jokester in the paper said he could be the first coach in the history of the game to get sacked from 3 different clubs. So that would be terrible, that sort of comment. You don't need to hear that, do you? Because he's a fine gentleman,
There would
Rodney.
be others, surely.
That's what someone said, that he'd be the first to get sacked at 3 clubs. That's what someone said. I'm quoting what someone else I read somewhere. No, I don't know whether it's right or wrong or whatever.
It's what the definition of sack.
You're quoting someone. You need to quote the name. You need to quote where you read it. You need to quote the date.
Yeah, can you remember everything you quote?
Take some notice of it.
Can you remember everything you quote? Name, date,
if I'm putting it out in the public.
No, but I'm just asking you a question.
Yes, I do.
You do you?
I do.
So if someone wrote something in 1991 about something, you'd be able to say that was Joe Bloggs or Mike Sheehan or Geoffrey Poulter or something in 1991 in the Herald Sun. You'd be able to say that.
You heard of a guy called Robert Walls?
I haven't heard you say that before, Troy. Often saying I have heard you say, the other day I read something by someone about something, but not going back 10 or 20 years.
Yeah,
you just completely disregarded what I was saying.
Well, I was still talking before you spoke. What did you say?
Well, Parkin reckons he's been sacked everywhere he went. And also, what's your definition of sack?
Sacking, yeah.
Yeah, no, sacked it.
Signing a document.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Robert Walls. He never left anywhere off his own volition, did he? 5 minutes.
We were trying to do that secretly then. Brisbane Lions for Collingwood. Hang on, did we get down to it?
Polt's getting it.
I blew it, didn't I? Sorry.
GWS I'm picking them to win by 80 points.
Yes.
80?
Yeah, 10 goals, yes.
Yeah,
60.
Around about that. But I've just got a call from our production team, Pulse. We're going to have to cut your segment by half an hour next week.
Running out of time. That means that... don't tell me our man has been ringing from Spain, has he?
Yeah.
He has been. He couldn't be watching it live.
No, Dan just gave me the signal.
Oh, I see. Brisbane Lions v Collingwood. We better get into it then. Let's not waste time. In comes Daniel Merritt. That's a big in for Brisbane against Collingwood. Lewis Taylor, who's got talent. Out goes Harris Andrews with a foot, and Tommy Rockcliffe's done a string. In comes for Collingwood Sinclair, Varco, Adams, and out goes Aisho Midded. That was on the cards. Broomhead with an ankle and Reid with a shoulder. The milestone game. Jack Ross playing his 50th, and Ben Crocker played his first game last week. Geoffrey.
I think Collingwood will win, but mainly because Brisbane isn't any good. Now, I'm not necessarily declaring that Collingwood is good, but I think it's a bit like that game when, again, I'm repeating old jokes, Troy. Baron Rutherford said once when Footscray played Fitzroy, he said, I think it'll be a draw because neither of them are good enough to win.
No, I like that one. I like that, folks. That's very good. Peaky enjoyed it too. So
that was a ripper. That's
everybody's
a ripper
on board.
Troy?
Yes.
Yes, Brisbane Lions Collingwood.
Oh, look. Where do you go, Peaky?
Well, I know what I'm going to be doing.
Look, I'll tip the Lions by... It'll be a close one. 2 goals.
Yeah, Brisbane Lions for mine will be too strong, too committed, and with Merritt in there, they're going to be more physical, I think, than Collingwood, because you know how he likes to go.
Yeah, big favourite of yours.
Well,
Dan Merritt.
Yeah, he's not a favourite, but I do
As you
recognise
adjust
him.
your glasses, which is a clear signal that you're not a great fan.
I do recognise, thank you, sir. I do recognise that he is a very tough hombre, and he's their number one enforcer. All right, for the Brisbane Lions. I don't need to say anything more than that to him, because if you can't work it out from there, then I can't help you. So Brisbane Lions for mine by 5 goals.
Okay.
Brisbane Lions 5 goals. Richmond v Sydney, MCG, Saturday night. I'll be there. Dylan Grimes, Alex Rance, that's a big hit. Out goes Castagna, omitted, and Camden McIntosh has got an ankle problem. In for Sydney, Richards and Towers, that's a big in, Richards, and out goes McGlynn with the leg, and Daniel Robinson, McGlynn, that's not good. Troy, we go to Geoffrey first, and then Troy. Geoffrey.
If Cochin had played, they would have had some hope, but I think Sydney are probably the best team in the competition, so I think they'll win.
Yeah, Sydney.
Couldn't agree with you more, Paul. 6 goals for the Sydney Siders.
Sydney, 8 goals. Carlton v Port Adelaide, at wherever that's at, which is at Etihad. In comes Buckley, Graham, White. No one out yet.
Wherever that's at.
Yeah, it's at
is that a new stadium in Melbourne?
It is, actually.
Wherever that's at stadium.
Etihad. Out in for Adelaide. No one out yet at Carlton. No one out for Port Adelaide. Just bring in Amon, Howard, De Grey. They've both got mutually extended benches at this point in time. Cam Simpson plays his 250th, and the other boy, Jemison, plays his 150th. Jeffrey, I'll have to be quick here.
I think Port Adelaide will win. Carlton's been in great form, but Port Adelaide's got a bit more talent.
Yeah, Port Adelaide just.
Port Adelaide just by a couple of goals. West Coast Eagles St Kilda over there in West Australia Domain Stadium. In Bennell, Butler, Cole and McGinnity for West Coast. Out goes Jeddah omitted. That's a big omission too. Thomas Colin for his first game for them. St Kilda got Templeton, Robertson, Murdoch, Sinclair and Pearce. Lewis Pearce from Mount Martha coming in, possibly for his first game. And out goes Minchington omitted and Sam Fisher. Jeffrey?
I think the Bulldogs will win. Melbourne.
The West Coast Eagles v St Kilda, sorry.
Over there, the West Coast
West Coast,
Eagles are
yeah.
over the line.
Yeah, and Troy?
Yeah, same as Pops.
Yeah, I think West Coast probably just be a bit too strong in their home turf. Very hard to win there with even when you're in the top 4 or top 6. Melbourne against the Western Bulldogs. The last game to talk about. In comes Salem, McDonald, Neil Bullen, Grimes, and out goes Kent with the back. For the Bulldogs, in comes Dunkley, Honeychurch, Bailey Williams, and Lyon. Out goes Marcus Adams with a finger near the Bailey Williams there, Geoffrey.
Bulldogs. Melbourne are improving, but I think the Bulldogs have to win these sorts of games.
Bulldogs by 4, Peaky.
Yeah, Dogs by 2 goals. And that brings us to an end of another big edition here. We'll be back next week with more of the same and with extra add-ons here on the Gladiators of Sport.